Hey, it's Soul, and today I want to share a story about my personal struggles with anxiety and what the World of Warcraft did to make that kind of worse, and what the World of Warcraft has done to mostly make it better. So I don't know if this is going to be inspiring, or maybe you're not going to find any connection to this at all, but I want to talk about this. Well, I do talk about this every now and then to remind people that, yes, there are players, there are even WoW creators out there who understand and feel challenged to group with people. So please like the video or not, subscribe to me, and catch me on stream if you want to talk about this openly. I'm happy to do it because these subjects, they're kind of a self therapy for me, I guess. So quick thing about me, I'm a weird one. As you can see, I'm a content creator and I'm a streamer, so I have no problems freely talking to strangers on the internet. You know, people who have a name and then a string of numbers after it. I'm a tank in World of Warcraft. I main one. So that normally makes it pretty easy for me to form groups, and I even run a guild. We're pretty tight knit. We do heroic raids, and with their help, I have been getting Keystone Master. Thanks for the carry, guys. So one would think, okay, so where is the social anxiety? Now, I'm very comfortable doing these things with my guild. I know them, they, for the most part, know me, and I'd like to think that at the end of the day, while I make mistakes, they know that I have their best interests at heart. So I guess I have a safe space with them, and it's thanks to that I don't experience most of the problems that many other folks face in this game with like trying to get into groups and avoiding toxic groups and weird conversations and avoiding key depletion. So it kind of makes me feel out of touch with many viewers, and I totally accept that. However, when I'm outside of my safe space, I just don't group up with people for dungeons or raids or whatever. And I wasn't always like this. Like, I've run dungeons since vanilla. I've been playing this game for a long time. So I've done those grinds for justice points, and I made sure to cap out on Valor or whatever each week by doing dungeons or else. And I've joined pugs, I've made pugs, and I've worked the dungeon finder, you know, doing the daily heroic and later on time walking, so on and so forth. So before Legion, and Mythic Plus. Before Legion, the joy, if you could call it that, it came from the idea that, hey, you know what, cool, I'm gonna do these dungeons until I don't need to do them anymore, and then I'm gonna move on to typically raids because that's just how it was back then. So when Legion did come around and it introduced Mythic Plus, it was both better and worse than how dungeons worked before. Like, for me, it got worse, and I'll try to describe it. Mythic Plus, by its very bare bone principles, it's great because it's got real longevity now. It can be trivial, but it also gets harder, and it scales up well beyond heroic and mythic and the other raid difficulties, and I love that. Honestly, it wouldn't matter if the affixes one week were like bolstering, necrotic, and necrotic again. Like, I was okay with high difficulty as long as the reward and the glory that it came from it matched the challenge, but it didn't exactly. What made Mythic Plus, I think, unenjoyable then and sometimes now, and reminder, this is a personal take kind of video, is that there's a timer on it. You can complete the dungeon, but you'll still essentially fail it if you don't make the time. Before Legion, and I guess outside of the challenge modes, all I had to do was go into the dungeon and clear it, and you get the gear and you get the points, and then you go home. Back in the before times, if it took too long to clear a dungeon, yeah, okay, people might leave because I gotta go, there's stuff going on, I got dinner, it's just taking too long, whatever. There's a certain pressure to, at the very least, stick around until the end, just complete it. Maybe we can find a body to refill in case someone had left, and you bring them in, you clear the dungeon, get your stuff, and cool. It still works that way. That's still there, but it's just not in Mythic Plus. Because Mythic Plus is measured pressure thanks to the timer. Mythic Plus, you can think of it like a 20 to 30 minute long raid encounter. Because there's no just idling, there's no going AFK, it's just go, go, go. And if you don't clear, you're penalized. And even if you do clear, but you just don't clear it on time, you're also penalized. But You also want to push as high as you can for the better stuff, again, without being penalized. Before Mythic Plus score in Shadowlands Season 2, Mythic Plus just felt like a total turnoff for me. And I admit, it was like 85% my fault. I felt really overwhelmed by the sudden social barriers as like Raider IO became a thing, as well as the dependence on add-ons to set routes and determine enemy count and to kick this and do that and so on. It is next level dungeoning, don't get me wrong, but as the tank who is kind of the natural leader of the party, it's like, okay, I got all these other things now. I got to keep an eye on the timer, and I got to be hyper aware of the people who I invite and keep an eye on the timer and check out the route that I take and the mobs that I pull on a given affix combo, and then the timer. The thought of doing dungeons, it felt overwhelming, and it made me anxious. It made me cripplingly anxious. If I didn't know the correct route according to their calculations, I'd feel bad and I'd piss off the pugs, or I would deplete a guildmate's key, and that worry would end up turning into this self-fulfilling prophecy. I'd lose focus, I'd slip, I'd then position bad, and I'd grab a few extra mobs, maybe even cause a wipe. So as we moved on, and on top of that, as we move on to the next season, it was the same dungeons, asking for that sort of experience, and lots of people had more experience. Everyone's a pro, and I just felt small, felt useless. So I was left with a choice. I could be a gamer and get good, right? I could complain, which is a gamer thing too these days, or I could just give up and not do it. And so what did I do? Go ahead and look me up on Raider IO. I hardly did any keys even during season 4 of Battle for Azeroth, even with like the corruption and everything was just nasty with the Twilight Devastations. It was a weird time for me, for someone who was, kind of accustomed to being like, okay, I'm gonna slam a few dungeons a day, and that changed. I just didn't want to put myself under that sort of pressure. But I also ended up not liking myself for that. I didn't like how I didn't feel useful for my team. But even with my guild, I just couldn't overcome this feeling of inferiority. Like, because I didn't invest into learning early enough, I would just feel like dead weight being dragged along. In hindsight, I don't know how I managed to still play WoW like every day, but not do dungeons. It was probably horrific visions. But Shadowlands changed things a lot with Mythic Plus Score, which came in Season 2. I remember when I first started covering it as a commentator, I studied how it worked, and I realized that, there would be a way for me to get gear from keys even if I didn't do well at all. So I played through Season 1 with Prideful, step back. I played Season 1 with Prideful, and I hated it because it just magnified my weakness of not knowing the routes or the exact pulls here and there. And again, this is me, and I didn't really care to use the tools and the add-ons to guide me. I just, go ahead and judge me for it, all right? But anyway, Season 2 of Shadowlands with Mythic Plus Score, it made it so that there was this additional buffer that let you get the score needed to upgrade gear and then eventually get Keystone Master, even if you didn't time most of your keys. And so that's exactly what I did. From seasons 2 to 4, I got my first Keystone Masters ever, mostly bumming off someone else's higher level key and barely getting through. Throughout that, I had the will and the way, but I didn't have the confidence. So it was definitely thanks to my guild that I got through it. This is kind of this, slow recovery phase of mine. Actually, let me walk that back a bit. If I did have the will, I would have picked up like the guides and the add-ons and such to get me through. I just got carried in that regard. Season 4 of Shadowlands especially felt good because this time around I was more at a kind of even level against my teammates who typically guide me through because they have months and months of experience. So just like what others have echoed throughout WoW discourse, rotating the entire dungeon set has been a pretty good idea to keep things fresh with different environments, mob sets, mob types, different items, and whatever. I had a slow start though because I would hear, streets are like way overtuned and this and that dungeon, it's not working right. So by the time I did start running keys again, I had the guild guide me through because they had more of that experience. And even in Season 1 of Dragonflight, pretty much the same pattern. I waited until some of the tuning was done before jumping in, and I relied on my guild to help me learn, and thanks to that routine, I got Keystone Master faster than I ever had before. But this season, season 2 of Dragonflight, it really changed things. I wish the team had thought of this back in Legion. I might have been a different player today because, well, so far this feels like the greatest season of Mythic Plus yet. I'm making a claim, okay? But I think I'm right. The gear upgrade system is fantastic. I'm much less dependent on having to run very high keys for just gear from the vault. I can run lower keys and upgrade what I can get from the end of a run. But I'm not running 2s, I'm running 9s through 11s or so. For me, the difficulty of those isn't so different from running heroics back in Cataclysm. They're not overly difficult, but you've got to look out for them. And running these keys also means fewer affixes. Like last week, I dealt with Incorporeal during a Tyrannical week, and that wasn't so bad. But when the difficulty brackets changed from, having a level 4, then a level 7, then a season level 10 affix, to just having a level 7 and a 14 affix, that's when things really opened up for me. I said earlier that running lower keys, it starts to feel like heroics once you've got the gear and the experience. Running these lower keys, it definitely gives me not just the gear, but the upgrades to make it better and very decent. And with some generous caps, I'm diving back in, building this experience. But I guess to be more precise, I'm building confidence in myself to incrementally handle these challenges as I run into tougher mobs, this thing to kick, this thing to handle, this route to change or whatever. And here's what's more, just this past week, I ran a few keys with just pugs, pure pugs, for the first time doing Mythic Plus at all. And it was fine. It wasn't perfect. There were problems and I missed timing one key, but there wasn't a single complaint. Although to be fair, there was virtually no one talking at all. But between this bigger difficulty buffer and the gear and the upgrade items, Season 2 has been doing a lot to invite players who normally don't do Mythic Plus or struggle with it. They're being invited with this path to get stronger with a learning curve that's not nearly as steep. It's welcoming, and I feel welcomed into it. The anxiety, of course, still doesn't go away. I still hate the timers. I'm still learning the routes through the OG add-on, which is to remember stuff in my head. It's nice that the affixes don't seem to affect the route that I take. And in this context, the anxiety, it fades with time and practice. But it gets worse with screw-ups and trash talk. Since Mythic Plus became a thing, I've shared my takes, but I've also made it clear that I didn't want it to adversely change for the sake of my player profile. I'm just glad that Mythic Plus, in fact, did change with respect to some of my concerns. Doing 9s to 11s are a spot that I can just vibe to. I can pop into music, find or make a group and then just slam it real quick. I feel productive at that level because group's complete, there's GGs all around, and that just feels really good. I still haven't gotten KSM yet. I'm in no rush to run out of things to do, and there's plenty of growing to be done. There's higher keys that I can still run, obviously, and maybe Keystone Hero might get on my radar, but one step at a time. After actively avoiding pugs for so long, I'm just kind of happy here. I've found a place where I can thrive and get out of my shell a little bit. I can play my class and not feel uncomfortable even around total strangers. Mythic Plus for me has been the best and the most accessible that it's ever been. I'm telling myself that this is an important story to share, and the story isn't over, but it's definitely going in what I'd like to say is a positive direction. You, viewer, though, have a uniquely different story, different challenges and experiences and preferences that might have made World of Warcraft more difficult to play over time. I'm not going to reassure you that it's going to get better, or that you're wrong and that it's great, or make specific suggestions on how it should improve, but maybe just maybe you feel a little bit less alone in how you're feeling. I'm with you. I feel you. And that's it. Like the video, subscribe, catch me live for a chat, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.